Neil Armstrong walked on the moon for only 2.5 hours, but he danced with death for 20 years to get there. From aerial combat in the Korean War to X-15 rocket plane test flights, from the heart-stopping accident in Gemini 8 to the historic landing of Apollo 11, every step meant potential death. So why did this man continuously accept impossible missions? And why did he disappear completely from public view after becoming the world's most famous person? Here's the unknown story of the world's greatest hero. Neil Armstrong's story isn't just about space adventure. It's the most extraordinary version of an American dream. This journey from a small Ohio town to fighting in the Korean War, then piloting the world's most dangerous test aircraft, and finally achieving humanity's greatest discovery, is the perfect combination of courage, discipline, and humility. Here are the incredible details you'll see in this story. Neil was only 20 years old during the Korean War, but flew 78 combat missions. He engaged in dogfights over enemy territory and conducted bombing runs under anti-aircraft fire. Once his aircraft was hit, and he had to make an emergency landing in enemy territory. During his time as a test pilot, death was a daily risk. He reached Mach 5.74 with the X-15 rocket plane, a speed higher than most fighter jets' maximum speed even today. Once the aircraft went out of control and nearly left the atmosphere, Neil regained control at the last moment at 140,000 feet, almost at the edge of space. Even before becoming an astronaut, Neil's survival record was incredible. Moments when he had to use ejection seats, engine failures, test aircraft catching fire. Each time he remained calm, used analytical thinking, and survived. The accident he experienced during the Gemini 8 mission was even more dangerous than Apollo 11. Stopping a spacecraft spinning out of control in space required every second to be critical. If Neil hadn't made the right decision, both he and David Scott would have died. Apollo 11's moon landing is the story everyone knows, but very few people know this. When the lunar module had only 25 seconds of fuel left, Neil switched to manual control. The landing site chosen by the computer was full of rocks and could have caused a crash. Neil found an alternative location at the last second and made a safe landing. But perhaps the biggest mystery is this. Why did Neil Armstrong completely withdraw from media and public life after returning from the moon? Despite being the world's most famous person, he didn't give interviews, didn't make speeches, and didn't even give autographs. This behavior drove both fans and media crazy. Neil's life philosophy was very simple. I am just doing my job. This humble attitude was the quality that made him both a perfect pilot and a perfect astronaut. His ego never exceeded his abilities. In this story, you'll also see how Neil transformed from an ordinary Ohio farm boy into the world's most elite pilot, how he became a genius in risk management, and most importantly, how he managed to live a normal life after achieving great success. Before we dive into Neil Armstrong's incredible story, let us quickly introduce ourselves. On this channel, we share the world's most inspiring true stories. We tell tales of the power of human will, the limits of courage, and the epic journeys of people who achieved the impossible. If you want to watch more of these compelling stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. This way, you'll be notified immediately when we upload new videos. Share in the comments below. Now let's get to Neil Armstrong's magnificent journey from Ohio farms to the moon. Neil Armstrong's story shows us that the greatest achievements come from the greatest risks. This journey from ordinary beginnings to extraordinary results is proof of how preparation, courage, and humility can create miracles. Are you ready? Then let's begin this incredible journey from Navy pilot to astronaut, from Korean War to the moon. Neil Alden Armstrong was born on August 5, 1930, in Wapakoneta, Ohio. His father, Stephen Koenig Armstrong, worked as a state auditor, while his mother, Viola Louise Engel, was a housewife. Neil's childhood was typical of a Midwest American family, but with one difference. He constantly looked at the sky. When he was 2 years old, his father took him to the Cleveland National Air Races. Little Neil was mesmerized when he saw the aircraft. That day, before he had even fully learned to speak, he began imitating airplane sounds. His family noticed this early interest in aviation, but no one could guess where it would lead. At age 6, he took his first airplane ride, with his father in a Ford Trimotor. That 20-minute flight changed Neil's life. "From that moment, I knew I wanted to be in the air," he would say years later. But Neil didn't just want to be a passenger. He wanted to be a pilot. At age 8, he began making model airplanes. He set up a small workshop in the basement and spent hours working on plastic models. But Neil was detail-oriented. Every model had to be perfect. This perfectionist nature would later save his life. At 14, he began taking flying lessons. While he couldn't yet drive a car, he was learning to fly an Aeronca Champion. His instructor, Aubrey Knudsen, was amazed by Neil's natural talent. "This kid is a born pilot," he told his friends. At 16, he got his pilot's license, before his driver's license. This was very unusual for Ohio at that time. Neil could now make solo flights, but his family was worried. Aviation was still considered very dangerous in those days. During high school years, Neil was also academically excellent. He was very good at mathematics and physics, but his real passion was engineering. He decided to study aeronautical engineering at Purdue University. But there was one problem. His family didn't have the money. In 1947, he applied to the Holloway Plan. This program guaranteed college education to promising students in exchange for Navy service. Neil was accepted and started at Purdue. But according to the agreement, he had to serve in the Navy after studying for 2 years. His first years at Purdue were challenging. Engineering coursework was very difficult, but Neil was determined. He showed excellent performance in aerospace engineering classes. His professors were impressed by his ability to combine theoretical knowledge with practical aviation experience. In 1949, he completed his 2-year college education and joined the Navy. He went to Naval Air Station Pensacola for flight training. Here, military flying was completely different, much more challenging, more dangerous, more precise. Navy flight training was brutal. 40% of candidates couldn't complete the program, but Neil not only survived, he excelled. His instructors admired his ability to remain calm under pressure. He never panicked in emergency situations, always using an analytical approach. In 1950, he earned his Naval Aviator wings. He was 20 years old and now an F-9F Panther jet fighter pilot. But as soon as he got his wings, the Korean War broke out. Neil knew he needed to prepare for combat. He was assigned to the USS Essex aircraft carrier and sent to Korean waters. He flew his first combat mission in September 1951. The target was North Korean supply lines. Neil made a bombing run with the F-9F Panther and successfully hit the target. But the real action in the Korean War was ground support missions. Neil's squadron attacked Chinese and North Korean positions. These missions were extremely dangerous because anti-aircraft fire was very intense, and enemy fighter aircraft constantly posed threats. The most memorable mission occurred on September 3, 1951. Neil was on a reconnaissance mission deep in North Korean territory. While trying to photograph the target area, the aircraft hit an anti-aircraft cable. Part of the wing broke off and the aircraft lost control. Neil immediately implemented emergency procedures. He tried to guide the aircraft toward South Korean territory, but altitude was dropping rapidly. He reached friendly territory at the last moment and used the ejection seat. He made a safe parachute landing and was rescued by Marine ground units. This incident was Neil's first near-death experience, but not his last. During the Korean War, he flew 78 combat missions and faced multiple dangerous situations. But each time, he remained calm, followed proper procedures, and survived. In 1952, his Korean War service was completed, and he returned to America with the USS Essex. Neil was now a combat veteran, but was still only 22 years old. After completing his Navy service obligation, he returned to Purdue to finish his degree. In 1955, he received his aeronautical engineering degree. Now he had to make a career decision: commercial aviation, military aviation, or something different. Neil wanted something more challenging. He decided to become a test pilot. He started working as an engineer at NACA, National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NASA's predecessor, Lewis Research Center. But his real goal was to become a test pilot at the high-speed flight station at Edwards Air Force Base. This facility tested the most advanced experimental aircraft. In 1955, he transferred to Edwards. Here he began working with legendary test pilots Chuck Yeager, Scott Crossfield, and Pete Knight. Neil was only 25 years old, but was among the best pilots in the world. His first major assignment was the X-1B program. This aircraft researched supersonic flight. Neil made multiple flights and collected valuable data. But the X-1B was just the beginning. More dangerous aircraft were coming. In 1960, he was assigned to the X-15 program. The X-15 was a rocket-powered aircraft that could reach speeds up to Mach 6.7. This was practically spaceflight because it could reach altitudes of 50+ miles. Neil's first X-15 flight was on November 15, 1960. The aircraft was dropped from a B-52 bomber, and the rocket engine was ignited. Neil reached Mach 4.2 and climbed to 48,000 feet altitude. The landing was smooth, but Neil knew this was just the beginning. The most dangerous X-15 flight was on April 20, 1962. Neil was following the planned trajectory, but the aircraft began atmospheric skipping. This meant bouncing off the atmosphere and was extremely dangerous. The aircraft climbed to 140,000 feet, virtually to space. Neil didn't panic. He manipulated the control stick with gentle movements and gradually brought the aircraft back to the atmosphere. But fuel consumption was much higher than planned. The landing approach was critical because there was only one chance. Neil overshot Edwards Air Force Base but made a safe landing on the dry lake bed. Post-flight analysis showed that if Neil had made different decisions, the aircraft would have gone to space and couldn't have returned. This incident proved Neil's exceptional piloting skills. During his test pilot career, Neil made a total of 900+ test flights. Multiple aircraft types: X-1B, X-5, X-15, F-100, F-101, F-102, F-104. Each aircraft brought different challenges and risks. In 1962, NASA announced its astronaut selection program. Neil immediately applied. His test pilot experience and engineering background were the perfect combination. The selection process was extremely rigorous: physical tests, psychological evaluations, technical interviews. Neil was selected and became a member of NASA Astronaut Group 2. Now a completely new challenge was beginning: spaceflight. But the principles were the same: careful preparation, calm under pressure, precise execution. His first space mission assignment was Gemini 8, together with David Scott. The mission objective was to rendezvous and dock with the Agena target vehicle. This would be the first docking in space and was a critical capability for Apollo lunar missions. Gemini 8 launched on March 16, 1966. The initial rendezvous phase was perfect. Neil manually approached the Gemini spacecraft to the Agena and accomplished successful docking. History was made, the first docking in space. But the celebration was short-lived. 27 minutes after docking, the combined vehicles began uncontrolled tumbling. Initially, Neil thought the problem was with the Agena and undocked, but the problem was with Gemini's thruster system. A thruster was stuck and firing continuously. The spacecraft was spinning rapidly, 1 revolution per second. At this rate, Neil and Scott would soon pass out from G-forces. Neil immediately activated the backup control system and shut down the problem thruster. But fuel was significantly depleted. Mission Control declared an emergency landing. The planned 3-day mission was reduced to only 10.5 hours. Neil made a controlled splashdown in the Pacific Ocean, and they were recovered by the USS Leonard F. Mason. Post-mission analysis showed that Neil's quick thinking and proper procedures had saved 2 lives. If he hadn't activated the backup system, the spacecraft's spinning rate would have reached fatal levels. The success of Gemini 8 made Neil a primary candidate for the Apollo program. In 1969, Neil Armstrong was assigned as Apollo 11 commander. Mission objective: the first human landing on the Moon. Apollo 11 launched on July 16, 1969. The crew was Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. The 4-day journey to the Moon was beginning. Neil transferred from the command module to the lunar module and began descending to the Moon's surface with Buzz. The lunar module, Eagle's descent, was challenging. Computer alarms were sounding, fuel was rapidly decreasing. The planned landing site was rocky and unsuitable for safe landing. Neil switched to manual control and searched for an alternative landing site. The fuel gauge showed almost empty. Only 25 seconds of fuel remained. Neil finally spotted a suitable area and made a gentle touchdown. The words, "The Eagle has landed," became historic. On July 20, 1969, at 2017 UTC, Neil Armstrong became the first human to step onto the Moon's surface. The words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," would be remembered forever. They stayed on the Moon for 21.5 hours and conducted scientific experiments. After the successful return from the Moon, Neil became an instant worldwide celebrity, but he was uncomfortable with fame. Media requests came constantly, but Neil accepted very few. He maintained his "I am just doing my job" attitude. In 1971, he retired from NASA and became an aerospace engineering professor at the University of Cincinnati. He enjoyed teaching because he could transfer knowledge to the next generation, but he continued to minimize public appearances. In 1979, he moved to the corporate world and became a board member of multiple companies. But he always chose aviation-related companies: Theocall, United Airlines, Learjet. He used his technical expertise in the business world. Neil's later years were quiet and private. He gave rare interviews and didn't give autographs. "I don't want to be remembered for my fame, but for my contributions to science and exploration," he said. On August 25, 2012, Neil Armstrong passed away, at age 82, from cardiovascular complications. His death created worldwide mourning. President Obama said, "Neil was among the greatest of American heroes, not just of his time, but of all time." The funeral was private, but the memorial service was public. Thousands of people attended, including fellow astronauts, test pilots, and aviation legends. Neil's legacy wasn't just the moon landing. It was a lifetime of service to aviation and space exploration. The Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building at NASA Johnson Space Center bears his name. The Armstrong Air and Space Museum is located in his hometown in Ohio. Multiple scholarships and awards honor his memory. Neil Armstrong's legacy continues in aviation and space exploration. His techniques and approaches are still taught in modern astronaut training. Calm under pressure, meticulous preparation, humble attitude. These principles are timeless. Modern astronauts study Neil's decision-making processes, especially his manual control of the lunar module during the Apollo 11 landing. His ability to quickly assess situations and make correct decisions under extreme pressure became a model for crisis management training. The X-15 program that Neil participated in laid the groundwork for the Space Shuttle program. Many of the flight control techniques and procedures he helped develop were later incorporated into shuttle operations. His engineering insights contributed to safer spacecraft design. Neil's approach to public life after his historic achievement also set a precedent. Unlike many celebrities, he chose substance over fame, education over entertainment. His work as a professor influenced hundreds of engineering students who went on to careers in aerospace. His corporate board service helped bridge the gap between NASA's research achievements and commercial applications. Companies like Learjet benefited from his practical knowledge of high-performance aircraft design and operation. The Neil Armstrong Test Flight Center at Edwards Air Force Base continues the work he began as a test pilot. New experimental aircraft are still tested using principles and procedures he helped establish. His systematic approach to risk assessment remains standard practice. His childhood home in Wapakoneta became a pilgrimage site for aviation enthusiasts. The museum there displays not just his space achievements, but his entire career progression, from Navy combat pilot to test pilot to astronaut. International recognition of his achievements includes craters named after him on both the Moon and Mars. The Armstrong limit in aerodynamics, which describes the boundary between subsonic and supersonic flow, honors his contributions to high-speed flight research. Perhaps most importantly, Neil's emphasis on team achievement rather than individual glory influenced NASA's culture for decades. His refusal to take sole credit for the moon landing helped maintain focus on the collaborative nature of space exploration. Neil Armstrong's journey from Ohio farms to the moon gives all of us a profound message about the power of exploration spirit and courage. The greatest achievements come from the calm under pressure and systematic thinking we show when facing the greatest risks. This journey, from an ordinary small-town boy to the hero who achieved humanity's most iconic moment, is proof that preparation, humility, and unwavering determination can create miracles. The first and most powerful lesson we can draw from Neil's story: excellence is not a destination, but a journey. Neil was continuously learning at every step, from combat pilot in the Korean War to test pilot, from test pilot to astronaut, from astronaut to the moon. He never said, "good enough." There was always room for improvement. This continuous learning mindset made him exceptional in every field. The second critical lesson: true courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. Neil experienced countless near-death experiences: ejection over enemy territory in the Korean War, atmospheric skip in the X-15, uncontrolled spinning in Gemini 8, but he never quit because missions were more important than fear. The third valuable lesson: preparation is everything. Neil's success in the moon landing wasn't random luck. It was the result of 20 years of systematic preparation. Every skill, every experience, every lesson learned was critical on the moon. Luck is where preparation meets opportunity. Neil's entire career was the embodiment of this principle. The fourth powerful principle: humility is the foundation of success. Despite being the world's most famous person, Neil always said he was just doing my job. Ego never overrode his abilities. This humble attitude enabled better collaboration with teammates and led to better decision-making. The fifth important message: great achievements are not individual efforts, but team efforts. Neil didn't go to the moon alone. NASA's 400,000 employees, contractors, scientists, and engineers contributed. Neil always acknowledged this team effort and shared credit. The sixth inspiring lesson: purpose is more important than fame. Neil rejected the celebrity lifestyle after the moon landing. Instead, he focused on education, science, and the next generation. His attitude of, "I want to be remembered for contributions, not fame," showed his real values. So how can you apply these lessons in your own life? First, embrace continuous learning. See every challenge as a growth opportunity. Like Neil, never stop asking questions and never stop improving. Second, make systematic preparation. Success is not random, it's the result of meticulous planning and preparation. Make detailed plans for every goal and execute consistently. Third, practice staying calm under pressure. In crisis situations, use analytical thinking instead of panic. Like Neil, systematically break down problems and develop step-by-step solutions. Fourth, maintain humility. Don't let success make you arrogant. Always remember that individual achievement is the result of team effort, and sharing credit is a leadership quality. Fifth, work for a bigger purpose. Fame and personal gain are temporary, but contributions to humanity are lasting. Like Neil, choose legacy over celebrity. Finally, don't be afraid to take calculated risks. Great achievements are accomplished outside the comfort zone. But like Neil, take intelligent risks backed by proper preparation. Neil Armstrong's story shows us that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things if they have the right mindset, proper preparation, and unwavering determination. That small step on the moon wasn't just Neil's, but humanity's giant leap. You too can follow Neil's example in your own impossible missions. Remember, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But that small step required a lifetime of preparation, courage, and dedication.